Hej och välkommen allihopa. Vi ska strax köra igång vårt Power BI-webinar här. Vi ser att det är en hel del inne. Vi kan börja med att checka så att ni hör oss och att ni ser oss och att ni ser presentationsdäcket som vi delar. Vart det står skapa insikter och analysera trender med Power BI. Ni kan gärna skriva i chatten ifall ni ser och hör. Tack. Då har vi fått bekräftat att ni är med oss. Klockan är 11 slagen. Varmt välkomna allihopa. Det här är ett inspirationspass för att ge er insikt i hur ni kan använda er av Power BI. Power BI är Microsofts svar på när det kommer till visualisera data och bli mer datadriven som organisation och individ. Vi ska säga igen, du kan byta slide så kan jag köra igång på en gång.
Absolut.
Vi som presenterar här, vi representerar Innofactor. Innofactor är ett Microsoft Powerhouse och vad betyder då den lilla ordet? Det är att vi är en Microsoft Cloud Solutions partner. Vi jobbar med mycket, nästan allt Microsoft tillhandahåller och vi är specialister på området. Vi kan byta slide på en gång. Så vi är en nordiskt företag och jag och min kollega Ian som är med idag här, vi representerar Sverige, den svenska delen av Innofactor. Men på en nordisk nivå så är vi väl ungefär 600-650 personer som jobbar inom alla delar inom hela Microsofts erbjudande. Så allt ifrån vi hjälper våra kunder med deras molnresor, vi hjälper dem med deras säkerhet, identiteter, vi hjälper till med affärslösningar som till exempel CRM, HR-lösningar, medlemssystem och andra applikationer. Och idag så kommer vi prata om Power BI. Power BI är en del av produktfamiljen Power Platform som vi också pratar väldigt mycket om här på Innofactor. Och vad är då Power Platform? Det är Microsofts svar egentligen på hur man kan utveckla med till exempel low code. Och det handlar om att flytta utvecklingen av sina affärsapplikationer från traditionell IT. Kanske dela med sig av viss del av utvecklingen. Där vart vi producerar den med hjälp av ingen kod eller väldigt lite kod i samarbete med IT då. Och det är då både för att avlasta IT-avdelningen, få en snabbare time to market, en lägre kostnad och att det är de som ställer kraven, det vill säga era line of business eller verksamheter som själva utvecklar de lösningar de behöver. Det här pratar vi väldigt mycket om på andra event så att vi håller både Dashboard in a Day där vart Ian här hjälper er att förstå möjligheterna med Power BI, men utöver det så gör vi också både webbinarier och heldagsworkshoppar som där vart vi introducerar de här olika verktygen. Och inte från bara teknik utan även vilka värden det får för er som individer och för era verksamheter. Kort om det, vi byter slide igen. Så idag kommer vi titta på Power BI som är en del av Power-plattformen och det här kommer ni få lyssna till min kollega Ian som får introducera sig alldeles strax. Ian är våran evangelist när det kommer till Power BI. Så välkommen igen.
Thank you.
Förlåt Ian. Innan Ian drar igång här. Ian förstår svenska men han gör sig bäst på engelska. Så att jag tänker mig kommande dialoger där vart ni vill prata mer med oss. Så, vi har ju fler också kollegor inom det här. Men har ni några frågor? Ni kan skriva dem på svenska. Ni behöver inte skriva dem på engelska bara för att Ian pratar engelska. Och så summerar vi upp frågorna i slutet av dragningen här. Och ställ gärna frågor i chatten här så att vi försöker hinna med att svara av dem allt eftersom här.
Cool.
Tack.
Thanks again, Daniel. Thank you. Firstly, good morning. Welcome to Innofactor's webinar regarding Power BI. Today we're going to have a very quick look through some very good concrete examples of typical situations that Power BI has been used to deliver digital insights. We'll start with the screen that Daniel has left on. Power BI, for those who've never seen it before or heard about it, sits within a product family within the Microsoft Power Platform. There are various other tools in here, and not for today's focus, but they're all very much related to each other. If you'd like to dig and understand what these extra elements are about, then we can offer that kind of conversation at another time. But to carry on, Power BI. I always start my webinars or dashboard in the days or any other channel that I use to talk about Power BI to give some useful advice. So these are my top tips and hints. So when you're in Power BI, for those who've maybe just started their journey or are about to, the brilliant thing with this is to remember that you can't break anything that's in Power BI. So you're very free to experiment, try things out and see how it works. There's no danger of removing or changing data that's in Power BI. So that gives you some sort of comfort blanket, I'm hoping. Tools to learn further information regarding Power BI and how it could work for your organization are available within the Microsoft Learn pages. That's a very straightforward link. It's microsoft.com/Power BI. You'll find all kinds of documentation, demonstration examples, all kinds of content there. So that's a good recommendation. My personal options for considering what's latest and greatest in Power BI is to use YouTube. Now I've put two of my favorites in here. This slide deck should be available to you, if not within this webinar, certainly afterwards, so you can have the links directly. But there are two here, Guy in a Cube, that's actually produced by Microsoft employees directly. Then we have one of my favorite YouTubers, How to Power BI. It breaks it down very, very small amounts, and it becomes very easy to understand the content that's in there. So if you have a particular question, chances are it's in that Power BI channel. Another website, of course, is Power BI Days. It's basically a blog post with links and articles. It's free, and it's designed by the community for the community. So people who are using Power BI might find useful tips and tricks, and they can post them up onto the blog site. And they can also link through to other interesting articles and documents. So very much worth a click. That's my LinkedIn QR code. Feel free to reach out, get in touch. Very, very happy to talk about Power BI with anybody. So don't be afraid. I'm hopefully quite approachable. So if you have any questions, you just want to talk about it, get in touch with me. And of course, we have our InnerFactor email addresses, which will come later in the slide deck here. So the main question is, what is Power BI? For those who've never seen it before, it is basically a self-service, cloud-based analytics service. What does that mean? It's a SaaS environment. So basically it's a software as a service. It can be used to connect to a wealth of different data sources. And it provides you a platform to be sort of creative and productive with the data that you have access to. So it's not just about creating insights and reports, it's also about visualizing the data that allows you to make clear business decisions. And one of the main points to remember is that it reduces the time it takes. You know, I've been doing this sort of role for many years. Used to start with working in an IT department where you'd be responsible for refreshing reports every morning. Those days are gone with Power BI. The moment you open Power BI, you are looking at the latest data. So it's basically about reducing the time, becoming more self-service, and becoming a little bit more independent regarding your own data requirements. So let's dive in a little bit more. Trying not to scare you here, so we have a very friendly overview of the architecture of Power BI. Just to give you a quick insight on how it actually works at an architectural level. So you can see if we start on the bottom left of this visualization, we have some common data sources. Excel files, of course, being the most obvious. Then we have databases. I'm sure that we've all got access to or had access to SQL environments, just to give you an example. And SharePoint, you know, bringing information from an organization into a more structured sort of level. In the middle of that line there, we have, of course, things like Power BI Desktop, which we will look at very briefly today, and how that basically is the endpoint. How do we get data to Power BI Desktop to create reports? And then once we have that, we push it up to the main layer, the analytical layer, where we actually start to distribute, create reports and dashboards, control who can see that kind of information, and provide it in terms of embedding it into, say, a website or using it with other cloud sources. And then we have authenticated users. So very much a focus of Power BI is security, making sure that we give the right information to the right people. So we have something called row-level security. It also uses Active Directory to control groups of people. So that's a quick overview of the architecture. It's pretty much based on this framework. It's of course subjective to your data. Moving along. So some of the main benefits why we should use Power BI. Of course, Microsoft is what we specialize in. We're solution partners with Microsoft. But these are the main reasons. So it utilizes over 300 pre-built or custom data connectors. So the standard ones are things like we said, Excel, SQL Server, could be repositories in SharePoint, for example. But you could create custom ones. You can create API connections. We can do webhooks. We can do all kinds of cool things to get access to third-party software, for example. It uses, as we mentioned, Active Directory security. So it gives you peace of mind that only the right people are seeing the data. We use Power BI Desktop for creating, for authoring those reports, and of course, maintaining them, if you have a change request. We use the Power BI service for ingesting the data from Power BI Desktop. So that's basically a portal, which is very clean, and it just provides people, interactive reports with filtration. The main one to take away today is a single source of data or truth. We've all been there, I'm sure. We've had 2 or 3 different people thinking that the answer to a particular business question is a certain number, and they don't agree. This removes that and creates clarity. Lastly, data is available wherever you are. As long as you have 4 or 5G and Wi-Fi, you can connect to your Power BI sources. So you're not restricted to using this within your company firewall, for example. Something quite useful to take away also is what sort of technical skills, both technical and soft skills, do you need to work with Power BI effectively? So a little bit of data analysis, of course, is fundamental. Understanding how the relationships work between certain tables, understanding the business rules also. There is a fundamental language inside of Power BI called DAX. It sounds scary, but it's very much based on Excel formulas. So, take this column, divide them against each other. Here's your answer, for example. It's very helpful if you have SQL knowledge, if you're connecting to things like databases. It's not imperative, but it's a good skill to have. Excel skills, absolutely. If you're configuring data tables or if you're looking at certain columns and you like to change the content, it's very good to have that. And absolutely, data visualization skills. Making things flow, creating a journey of data. The soft skills are pretty much straightforward. It's business knowledge. Absolutely, you need to know what your company's doing, how it operates internally and externally. Having teamwork skills, absolutely. Another one, being able to sort of report and take requirements analysis from people. Organizational skills, I'm talking some obvious ones here, but to be organized with the requests and understand, the time frames when things need to be delivered. Presentation skills, it's also good to sit and talk about the findings in the reports and sort of take into consideration potential changes. And lastly, communication skills, being able to actually communicate and talk with each other, understand where the next requirement could come from. So those are very basic, nice to have skills when it comes to using Power BI in terms of a developer position, creating the reports. Moving on, we have some examples. What I've done to keep things hopefully nice and straightforward today is to actually embed some of my example companies I've made into this presentation. So it's a little slower than normal, so don't be too disheartened if it's a little slow to load a few things. In the real world with Power BI standalone, it's much faster, just to give you some clarity. So I have 3 companies I've designed. I've got some dummy data. We're going to look at 3 different potential end users of Power BI and their requirements. So we have a CFO and some financial reporting. We have a sales director, of course, with sales-based information, and we have human resources. So we'll start with financials. So this is a typical requirements analysis that anybody would receive, nothing over technical here. So this is Bethan. She works as a CFO for this company called Morgan Advanced Materials. She's using Excel and ERP data currently. It's updated by her IT department once a week, so her data is always quite old. So she's looking to use Power BI to give her more up-to-date, more reliable information to make business decisions. And she's looking at cost of goods, cash flow, and she wants to be able to interact with that data to see what sort of changes, if you make them now, what the impact is. So we have an example of how that would look. Very basic stuff here. We've got some standard visuals here, nothing scary. We have KPIs along the top. We can talk about that very quickly. So we have a revenue with a goal, so they're making sure that they're on track in terms of their income. We have a look at COGS, of course, cost of goods sold. We have gross profit, the percentage of that, net profit, and also the percentage of that across the top here. Sadly, my cursor isn't working in the webinar, so I can't point to things. We have interaction, of course, so we can click on any of this. Hopefully my mouse will let me click on some of it. So if I were to be interested in this actuals for February, if I were to click on this, he says, there we go, it's a little laggy, like I mentioned. This will then, yeah, perfect. This will interact with the actual remainder of the report and filter it down on your selection. So you can actually get an overview of how and what this is representing in terms of elements in the report. Of course, on the left-hand panel here, we have filtration. So we might want to look at a particular month and actually focus in on that. So we could click March, for example. A little slow to display, but you see the report is updating in real time. Forgive the delay. It does work, I promise, in real time. And of course, once you have that selection, we can then move on to things like the income statements in this report. He says, hopefully. Perfect, good example. Okay, trust me, I have no reason to lie to you. This would normally work very soon, so you can see I've got a spinning wheel of death there, so please forgive me. That will allow us then to take a deeper inside look, like a drill down in a sense, whilst I'm talking whilst this loads. Obviously, it's pulling connections through to a different point here in Effector, so it's taking a little while to load it, which is a shame. We can move on potentially. There we go. If I can click off this, it would be useful. There we go. We had this problem last time where it was just performance-based because it's embedded. Yeah, working well. Can I see the tabs at the bottom here? It's going well. Proves we're human beings at least. Okay, come on, let me click. Technical issues, always fun. Oh, what a good example. Let's see if I can just kick this out of, there we go. There we go, cool. There it is, fantastic. Sorry, I can't click on the other things. It's taking too long to load and I don't want to take up time waiting for something to load. So we can move on to the sales director's reports at least. Again, another example. So Brian would obviously look at managing his teams across different regions and territories, and he's looking for sales performance information from his CRM. It's another standard thing, using a CRM tool. It could be Dynamics, it could be any other third-party systems as well. There's no requirements, it has to be Microsoft. He's looking for fast access, ironically, in this presentation, to relevant information in one place rather than logging into different systems as he's doing currently. Okay, here we are. I'm going to try my best not to click on something that takes a long time to load on this one. So we have an overview dashboard here for him. So he can see his main KPIs along the top. We have some different variances. We have orders versus the target, and we have the revenue versus the target there. And we also have returns versus the target of returns. So he's got a good benchmark to see how he's performing in terms of products and customers. The middle section here is more sort of dive down version of that. We have different categories. So we have top 3 products, we have top 3 product categories, and we also have subcategories there. The last layer he's looking at as an overview is performance. So revenue by quarter, orders and revenue by month. These are very standard, very common requests of data to see this in real time. I'm going to try not to click on something that's going to load anything heavy. We can click on different pages, so we can actually take a dive into look at the product details, hopefully, if it will let me load it. Oh, looking positive on this one. There we go. Cool. So now we've got a more detailed view of what's causing those KPIs to represent those numbers. So you can see here that we have trends based on time versus revenue and profits. You can see this in the graphs just here. Hopefully you can see my mouse cursor. We also have tooltips. So whatever you stop on, you can actually get more information behind the scenes. These are very straightforward tooltips within Power BI. It's using a little bit of artificial intelligence in here as well to look at predictive analysis. So we have this point at the end here where we haven't quite achieved this value. So it's using a variance and looking at the trends and the history of the data to forecast where we're likely to be within a certain variance. Hopefully that makes sense. We have a breakdown in terms of the products, in terms of a performance overview, total orders and total profit for specific products, if I can get my teeth to work today. And of course, we have the standard filtration, as you would expect in any report, on the left-hand side here, where we can pick particular regions or locations, or focus the years or the months into an area of concern. We can pick particular products and their categories, and we can also do a little bit of adjustments. So how would it look if we changed the price on a particular item or a particular subgroup? So this is very interactive, very useful for the sales director in this case, to do some forecasting, to understand where the current positions are, what the trends are, what's causing those to be the way they are, and descriptions and detail to the numbers. You know, it's not like the old days with, say, a pivot table in Excel, which is just giving you the facts. It's giving you some predictive analysis, like I said, and it's also allowing you interaction with the data. We also have something quite cool at the bottom here as well. It's nothing super technical, but we have current live data being pulled from the system. So if someone were to load a brand new order into the CRM system for £1 million, you'd see this alert instantly on the bottom of the screen, just to show that Europe might have placed a new order and it's gone up by a certain value. Nothing complicated, I hope. We have a customer profile underneath too. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that this loads in real time too. It's much better to present things actually in Power BI sometimes, but we can't share double screen sadly in the webinar. Here we are, perfect. So we have a customer profile now, we have customer breakdown or details. So we can see here who our top customers are, how much revenue they've generated, what sort of products are they buying, the type of orders, when they're being placed, and what revenue that's generating for the company. So we can see the trends there, that we see that between October 2016 and January 2017, most of our orders are being placed in the system. Maybe that's Christmas shopping, for example. We can look at seasonality and trends based on seasons as well. We can also look at predictive analysis based on when customers are likely to make purchases based on order history. And we have the same information again with that ticker at the bottom. We see different profiles being loaded constantly. Again, I'm a little skeptical to start clicking on a few things, but any of this is interactive. So if I were to click on this product name, we would see a reflection and change into the details that we're seeing on the main screen. But I'm a little cautious to click on it based on loading times just for now, just because it's, like I said at the beginning, embedded inside PowerPoint. So yeah, as you can see, quite a comprehensive dashboard for sales. It's a good overview. It's good for the sales director to make a decision. Hey, do we need to add more salespeople in a particular region because it's performing not as well as potentially others? Or maybe we need to increase the warehouse quantity for certain products because they sell very quickly. So this is very useful for someone like a sales manager or a sales team or a sales representative. We can move on to another example. I can make sure this works nicely. Might need to click here. Oh, technical again. Perfect, there we go, cool. So now we have John. Yes, there's a fun reference if you're fans of the film Terminator. I just thought this was fun to create a profile based on human resources based on that old film, but that's just my weird sense of humor for you. John here is responsible for everything to do with HR. So welfare, development of people, looking at their well-being in the company, how far they're traveling to work, you know, their gender profile breakdowns. He's looking at performances, promotions, all the interesting human resources aspects. He's using different systems, but he's getting a lot of duplicated data and some of it is not matching together. They don't want anything complicated within HR. They need something very easy to understand. It needs to be easy to follow, and it needs to allow them to focus their time more on their role rather than trying to get too accurate data. So he's looking for Power BI to assist them with that output, and he's also looking to interact with Power BI. So we're using a little bit of some of the other Power Platform products. We're using a built-in Canvas app in this case. And he wants to be able to use that information on the screen in Power BI, make a decision, book, say, a meeting with a member of staff, and have that fed back into SharePoint. So we can see a good relationship between Power BI and the other products from Microsoft here. So let's take a look at that one. Just need to click on a few things here. There we go. So what we've got here, if I go back to the main screen, actually, we can start there. Surprised it's landed on this page. Let's just give this one a click. There we are. It should load. There we are. Perfect. So this is their main overview dashboard in a sense. So very straightforward, very friendly to view and to interact and see simple numbers. So how many people are active in terms of work right now? Who are due for retirement at some point soon? Distance from the office in terms of percentages. We're looking at a customer satisfaction survey or an employee satisfaction survey with the yellow graph just down here. So we've got job levels and their satisfaction with their job. We also have how long people have been working in certain breakdowns here. So 10 years plus, there are 202 people. Some who've been there for just over a year is 81. Basic questions. But going back to the main requirement from John, in this case, he wants to be able to interact with data and push information from Power BI into SharePoint. So you can see there, the app on the right-hand side is just loaded. So we can make a selection here. We can take Dwayne here as an example. And we see that the app has recognized our selection from Power BI. We have his name, we have their employee number, and we can create an entity inside SharePoint here. So we could say, we can book a review meeting. And we can then obviously choose when that's going to happen. So we can start, say, 17th of October. We're happy with that. And we can put in a status in here to say that we are looking to currently working, something like that. So if I hit submit there, we get a confirmation that that selection of data has now been loaded into SharePoint. We had a little problem with this last time. I'm feeling positive. If I were to click on this, it should open up SharePoint for us. Here we are. And we can see here that we have everything that's been loaded basically from this report here. So we have Dwayne here. That's probably a bad example. I'm trying to find the latest one. You could clean this up, to be honest with you. Let me give this a little refresh. It's always fun when it takes a moment. We should have a new one. There it is. Cool. So we have book a review meeting. We can obviously share and collaborate as you would do inside of SharePoint normally. We have a record of that transaction from Power BI. So that's a good way of demonstrating very simply, I hope, that Power BI can obviously then be the middle ground between viewing the data from a source, interacting with it, asking questions, which we'll come to in just a moment, and pushing the data into another application. So if I were to return to this, we have our home page, if I can come back to that one. Cool, we have this icon here. So this is using something called search-driven analytics. It's in a sort of a sense AI to a degree. So it's understanding natural-based query language. So in this case, English, sadly. Swedish language pack, I believe, is coming in March 2024. But you can ask questions, direct questions to that data set in Power BI. So we can say, how many employees, oops, if I could spell today, that would be very useful. Let's say male, for example. Could type again, that would be awesome. There we are. Cool. So we have percentage potentially. We can hopefully get that to work. We could also ask a different question. We could say something about job satisfaction. So I'm just typing like a Google question here. You see we get different prompts that have popped up. Job promotion status may be the questioning. So we have the two different categories here, and then we can put the word count. So we can have, hopefully, basic questions. I'm just guessing a few here. let's come up with another one. Let's say maximum distance to office or something like that. I'm going to go on a typing course later on, I think. Hopefully this gives us some sort of answer. Oh, there we go. So yeah, 61% live very close to the office. Maybe that's not answering it, but we can customize all of this search-driven analytics to actually understand maybe different business terms, or we have opportunity to give it synonyms, which allow it to take different words which mean the same thing into our data set and produce results from that. And then if we created a metric, we could turn this into a graph, for example. So we could hopefully say show us the graph, maybe. Fingers crossed. It's not behaving myself today. Come on, HR data. Good example again here. This is always fun. I'm trying not to use my mouse at the moment because that's what is causing it to delay slightly. So let's take this one away and we'll say maybe job satisfaction. Cool, so we've had 4,011 responses regarding a job satisfaction survey. Again, once you're happy with the kind of metric to start with, to get the answer, you can then convert this into any of the visualizations that we looked at. Going to come out of this one now. So we could then use that question-based thing here to create one of these metrics and load that back into our version of this. The great tool that we have with Power BI is the fact that we're not just sat here looking at what's been provided to us by whoever's responded to this requirements analysis to build the report. We can actually become active members to make the report more customized for the end user. So they could, with training, of course, and support from whoever the super user is at your organization, they could sit here and build their own KPIs and have their own version of this with the basis of their information being this master report. So they don't need to constantly change filters. They don't need to go in and remove things that aren't relevant to their role. They could actually have row level security to sort of decide for them what access they have to certain data. So we can come out of this one. And we can then close, hopefully, this screen. Daniel, if you're still with me, how are we doing for time?
We have still 13 minutes to go, so.
Good, perfect. Okay, very quickly, we can actually open up Power BI Desktop hopefully in a moment, and actually do hopefully a live demonstration of how we would connect a simple Excel dashboard Excel spreadsheet into Power BI and create a simple dashboard from there. But the key benefits of Power BI, I just want to talk about this super quickly. So for me, at least, when I'm talking to a customer and they're asking me, hey, why should I use Power BI versus something else? Here's most of the reasons I give them. AI, of course, is the big hot subject right now. Of course, we are all talking about things like ChatGPT. We're talking about AI, whether that's a safe tool or if it's potentially dangerous. My recommendation to anybody is that AI is not as scary as the media like to make out. AI is actually coming as part of Copilot with Microsoft in release wave 2 of March 2024. That's going to allow us to type real-time questions into a Power BI screen and hopefully produce visualizations based on that. Inside Power BI, as we saw today, we have certain little elements of AI that have been around for a couple of years now. We have that predictive analysis where it was creating a forecast. So we have our endpoint of data, and if based on the trend of that, where would it land, say, in 3 months from now? We've looked, albeit very quickly, at text recognition. We've done some search-driven analytics. It allows us to do image recognition too. We can actually load images into our database, and based on images, it will actually give us information based on that product against our database information. We have machine learning in here also, not necessarily the same as AI, but very closely related. So it starts analyzing the trends. Hey, every year at the same point, week number 40, for example, this happens to our data. So it will actually understand that and actually highlight that kind of information for you. Those familiar with more Microsoft products, we have the Azure machine learning models. Those can be brought in to Power BI. There is actually a section in the desktop that allows us to bring those trained models from your Azure environment directly into Power BI and utilize the output of the information. Of course, we looked at some dashboards and interactive reports, although it's a little slow because of the embedding today, but creating personalized dashboards. Yes, we get a standard report comes to us from whoever's creating that, but as I said just a moment ago, you can customize that and make it your own. You can create a bookmark with your own filters, so you don't need to constantly keep changing that to make it work for you. Once you have that, you can change the layout of the content. You can drag things around and make it a little bit more interactive and usable for your particular job role. And those with access to Power BI, we have one of those examples with, let's say, the sales reports. There could be a sales member that goes, right, this information is cool, but I don't need so much. I just need this particular product group. So they can actually go into that existing data source in Power BI and make a simple table. They can change things around, create their own content. They don't need permission. They don't need to wait for IT to build it for them. They can do that in real time. And moving on from real time, we can access information in real time. We can actually create live data. So if you have, say, a manufacturing process, you can actually see where a particular order is in that manufacturing process in real time. You can actually have that streaming information being pushed into Power BI. So that's all about helping to enable the solving of a problem, quickly identify issues and opportunity, especially. And we can look at time handling. So if we need to get to a problem quickly, we can actually identify that in Power BI in live data. Customizing security features is to be mentioned. We talked about row-level security at the very beginning. That basically is a set of rules against the data to say, hey, this particular region, these people belong to that region, and therefore they only see that region's worth of information. It could be that the CEO, of course, sees everything. We have sales directors that are responsible for different regions, so that row-level security will only allow them to see their own. And then within that sales region, we have sales representatives, salespeople. They only see their own information. It could be useful, especially when you have things like commission payments. Obviously, you don't want to create any sort of negativity by people comparing their commission payments. So that's a quick example of why real-time row-level security is quite powerful. I mentioned it right at the beginning, access to Power BI from your device anywhere. You know, sitting on the train this morning myself, coming into Stockholm, I'm opening Power BI, double checking a few things that I've been working on for a customer. That's the great thing. We have the app you can use in Power BI too. You can download that from your phone's app store. It works both on iOS and Android. It's completely free. It'll of course use multi-factor authentication to obviously ensure that the right person is logging in. But I recommend you try that today if you've not done that already. But the biggest one for me is the collaboration. The main benefit of Power BI is getting the information to the right people at the right time and having them communicate with each other about that data. So rather than having fragmented organizations where only certain people have the latest report and they're already making decisions based on that and some are left behind, or pushing information in real time and having a team of people looking at the same report and talking about it within teams. We can take a Power BI report and have that loaded directly into Teams. It's updating all of the time, and those team members within Teams are talking about that information. Hey, this guy, you need to focus on getting some more sales from that customer because they're looking to place a large order. Or, hey, I've noticed an issue with this report. Can we have someone maintain it and change this filter to include that new product group? Various different scenarios to consider there. But collaboration is the main thing. It's about making sure that we work harmoniously together. We're using the tools that are available to us, and we're looking at the same information. And that's what Power BI really excels on, pardon the pun. Okay, so I'm sorry, that's the wrong place to go. I'm going to see if I can get Power BI Desktop to open up nicely for me. I'm going to come back to here. I'm going to open up Power BI Desktop. Hopefully you can still see my screen here, Daniel. Can you confirm?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Cool. You have the Power BI logo, I hope, here.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, let's take a very quick demonstration of how I would connect to, let's say, some fake data and just pull some information in and build it in real time. So I'm just going to make sure I sign in to my own account here. So this, welcome, by the way, to Power BI Desktop. As you can see, whilst I'm just loading in my credentials here, that this is very familiar to anybody who's used Microsoft products. It has the same look and feel to things like Excel and Word, PowerPoint. Nothing hopefully scary in here so far. So this is your canvas. This is where we would build Power BI reporting. I'm not going to go through everything today. This is more relatable to our dashboard in a day workshops that we can take shortly. But how would I get information very quickly, just to give you a good example? So we have, as I mentioned, multiple different data connectors. There are over 300, maybe even more nowadays. The Microsoft development team are always adding different native connectors into Power BI, so there's always an update at least once a month. So we have the standard ones, things like Excel, existing Power BI, which is a huge win that I mentioned earlier. We have things Dataverse. If you're familiar with Dynamics 365, for example, if you have a new instance of that, Dataverse is embedded, it's included within Dynamics. So you can instantly leverage Power BI from Dynamics very quickly. SQL Server is an obvious one, text files, web, all kinds of stuff. I could show you the whole list here. It's quite overwhelming how many there are. I'm not going to go through any of this in huge detail, but Salesforce, for example, Google Analytics, LinkedIn, Facebook, standard ODBCs if you have traditional data warehousing. But this example, we're going to pull in a quick Excel file. And I'm going to go to my downloads, hopefully, and I have AdventureWorks here, which is what I used to build the sales dashboard that we saw earlier today. I shall open that here. So far, 2 clicks is creating a link for me now to the Excel documents. And it's going to present a preview, he says. There we are. So I have all of those individual tabs or sheets within Excel. So I'm interested in, let's say, sales, just for this example. And I will get a preview of that data here. So it looks like an Excel document, which is cool. We can, of course, we don't just load this if we need to make changes. We can change it before we load the data. So let's do that very quickly. This will open up another part of the engine room inside Power BI called Power Query. Power Query itself is that DAX that we were talking about at the beginning. This is where we have the ability to create custom columns. We can rename things, we can filter, we can create really cool calculated fields. Maybe we can generate something called net profit from something which we have in one of these tables. It might not exist in the source, so we can actually make that column here. I'm not going to dive into that too heavily right now, but just for an example, I don't need this reseller key. So I'm going to remove everything else and just take this column. It's going to be a terrible, bad report. If we make a mistake, we have this applied steps on the column here. We can remove that and it will revert back. So you're not deleting anything. We're not actually changing the source. We are taking a copy of that temporarily in, let's say, like a cache environment, and making modifications to that data to represent it how we want it to be when we build Power BI. Moving on very quickly, I'm not going to change anything, just keep it simple. I'm going to hit close and apply, and it's going to load all of that information from Excel into Power BI Desktop. Just takes a short moment. So what it's doing here, you might be familiar with a process called ETL. That's the extraction, transformation, and load. That's very much a traditional term in terms of getting access to a source, making a transformation and loading it into a place where we can ingest the data. So what do I have now? I have a sales tab here with all of those elements that we looked at earlier. So I'm interested in building something very quickly. I'm going to take a product key, I'm going to throw it, drag and drop, nice and straightforward. And it's going to give me a KPI value, nice and easy. What else do I would like in here? I would like a sales amount too, which I'm going to put over here. Nice. I might want to look at also, let's say, unit prices. Pop those in there. Now you can see here, these are defaulting what it thinks is the best way to represent that kind of information. But I can, of course, go into Power BI and change anything to be anything I want it to be. So I might want to change this into a donut chart, for example. I might want to put that into a bar graph of some description. Of course, I can go into this as well and pick empty tables like so, and I can add columns based on what I have here too. So I might want to take order quantity, and pop it in, and I might want to take a date. You can see here, all I'm doing is no code at all. I'm just dragging and dropping. And I'm building a table of data. I will spare you building something huge right now. What I can also do, once I have this, I can just minimize this, like so, and I have filters on here. So I could go into this, and I could go into this and say, right, I need to filter this where something is less than 100 or where it's greater than 1,000. Basic filters. We also have the ability to add some AI elements into this as we speak. So I'm going to drop down on here. Hopefully this will work nice and smoothly this morning. So if I deselect this, come back to this selection box at the top here, I can then create something called Smart Narrative. I shall click on that one. This is using AI to analyze what's on the screen, the type of data that it has, and write descriptive text based on our selections. And I appreciate that might be quite small on the screen, so let me see if I can zoom very quickly. Not a brilliant example for a webinar, but you can see here what it's done is summarized what's on the screen and given me some generated text based on that. So if I were to click on this, hopefully this will respond accordingly. Yep, sum of order quantity. Hopefully if I click on it, it will work nicely for me. Please work. But of course, the more detail that you add to the Power BI canvas here, the more information you're likely to receive in something like this AI tool, where it analyzes it and gives you a description of what's in there. What I can do very quickly, I've got a little bit of time left, which is good. I can open up something a bit more interesting. So again, going back to an example company I had, I'm going to talk about AI very quickly and some of the tools I've used to produce an example based on AI. I'm going to give this a few moments to load. So it's not really designed so much for the content in this. It's more a case of another example that can show you a very well-made report. I love the speed.
Visa det snabbt här för vi behöver sy ihop och runda av.
Okay. Here we are. So what I've got, just as we had before in the example we loaded in real time there, I have my dimensions and my facts. Those are the different types of tables. And I'm going to build a very quick report just here, which I did earlier, to give you a more of a interactive themed based on the same sort of data, but presented in a much cleaner way. And I can actually make that nice and big so you can enjoy the professional looking report I've put together. So you can see here, the AI I've used for this was to create color profiles. The AI I've used to create dummy data, and also the AI to help me build the measures. We talked about DAX and the calculated columns. Instead of coding that, which can take a while, I've used ChatGPT to say and describe the content of the data I have, and it's built the measures for me. So all of this report that we're looking at here was done with clicking a mouse. I barely used the keyboard. I've loaded some simple questions into ChatGPT. I've created some content. I've loaded that into Power BI by clicking Excel workbook. And what we see on the screen here looks very professional. It looks very well tailor-made, and it's very interactive. We have filter panels that it says, there we go, it's coming. It's just a little slow. There we go. We have the filters that pop out here, so we're not wasting real estate in the canvas to filter the data. It gives a good user end experience, so everything can be configured and adjusted to suit the end user's requirements. Yes, I think that will probably wrap up our quick introduction into the world of Power BI. We've touched on quite a few things. We've looked at the benefits of it, why you should use Power BI, how it can easily answer business-based questions. We've looked at the different types of connectors. We've done a very quick, super quick demonstration of how I would pull data in and manipulate that in such a way. And I've shown you a good example of a finalized report that has really hopefully captured some imagination, and it obviously works in such sense that we can use it with AI in that sense too. We have 10 minutes left. I think what I can do is hand back over to Daniel. Were there questions at all, Daniel, that we can answer?
Nej, det har inte kommit in några frågor här, så att jag tror vi gör så här att vi kan visa sista sliden där. Som sagt,
sorry.
Ni hör på Ian här att han pratar sig gärna varm kring Power BI, och här är ett sätt att vad ska man säga, inspirera er över möjligheterna. Är det så att ni vill ta en separat dialog med oss på Innofaktor, så är ni välkommen att kontakta oss. Ni har mina kontaktuppgifter på skärmen här, så att jag kommer också förse er med ett mejl efteråt där vart ni har möjlighet att boka ett rådgivningsmöte direkt baserat på vår tillgänglighet. Så istället för att hålla på pingponga fram och tillbaka, så ser ni när det finns möjlighet i våra kalendrar att ta de här kostnadsfria rådgivningsmötena vart vi diskuterar era utmaningar, era mål tillsammans med oss som vet vart ramarna och gränserna går när det kommer till Power BI. På så sätt så kan vi skapa bra innovation tillsammans. Så att gör så. Ta gärna kontakt med oss ifall ni vill ha ett rådgivningsmöte. Det låter ju jättetråkigt. Det är det vi kommer dragandes med, ett gratis rådgivningsmöte. Men det är faktiskt det som krävs för att man ska se att vi har en gemensam målbild och att det finns en lösning på utmaningen. Så att hoppas ni fann det här webbinariet intressant. Jag vill även marknadsföra ett event. Den 17 oktober så håller Ian Dashboard in a Day. Det är en heldagsevent där vart ni får vara med och skapa det här från ax till limpa och få en, vad ska man säga, snabb start till antingen eran påbörjade resa eller till en resa som snart ska starta. Där vart ni kan hjälpa era organisationer att bli mer datadrivna. Med det så tror jag att vi tackar för oss, och stort tack Ian för din insats, och tack alla ni som var med här. Ni får våra kontaktuppgifter efteråt här också, och ni behöver inte vänta på att kontakta oss, utan kontakta oss igen om ni har något. Tack!
Perfect. Thank you so much for listening.